Welcome to another episode of the Speaking of Writers podcast. I'm Steve Richards. Nick Petrie is the award-winning author of the best-selling Peter Ash series, 9 novels strong and still raising the bar for modern thrillers. His debut, The Drifter, won the ITW Thriller and Barry Awards and was nominated for the Edgar, Anthony, and Hammett Awards. Since then, Petrie has been named one of Apple's 10 writers to read, won the Wisconsin Library Association Literary Award, and earned multiple Barry Award shortlist honors. Now he's back. His new one is called The Dark Time, a propulsive new installment that throws veteran hero Peter Ash into a storm of political fanaticism, technology-driven division, and a chilling death threat against an investigative journalist. Praised by Entertainment Weekly as the first crime fiction character to measure up to Jack Reacher in years, Peter Ash returns in a story that feels ripped right from today's headlines. I'm happy to have Nick Petrie back here on the Speaking of Writers podcast. Welcome.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Steve. It's great to be back.
Great to have you here. So, Nick, take us to the moment The Dark Time began for you. Was it a headline, a character voice, or a what-if scenario?
It was none of those. I don't really start with with a big idea. I start with sort of something that I am sort of thinking about or that I'm feeling. So this book really started with I guess I was reading the news, and I think like a lot of people between our kind of wildfires and superstorms and, our crazy divisive national politics and, the advent of AI that is, I think has the capacity to really rapidly change sort of the economics of our culture. I was starting to really think about the world that my son was going to inherit when I was gone. And then it made me think about other people. I think this kind of anxiety is becoming more of a regular feature. So I was thinking about, if I was somebody who wanted to really do something about that, what would I do? And that was sort of the initial impulse for this.
The title itself feels ominous and timely. What does The Dark Time mean to you personally and thematically?
Wow, that's a very literary question. I mean, I think we are kind of in a dark time now. We're now engaged in a new war in the Middle East. There are multiple international wars. I think this is going to, what's the famous Chinese curse? May you live in interesting times. I think we are there, and I try hard to have a lot of hope in the world, and I see a lot of hope in the world. But when you read the news, it's a little hard to feel that sometimes. And in terms of the book, there's sort of a double meaning to it, and I won't get into kind of all of that because I don't want to spoil anything. But the villains in this are people who really want to have a very radical vision for what they want the world to be. This is actually it's kind of the biggest story I've ever told. So it was a bunch of fun to do.
Peter Ash, 9 books in now. When you first introduced Peter in The Drifter, did you imagine he'd still be evolving nearly a decade later?
No, I never thought that first book would get published. I wrote 3 books that I couldn't get published, and the last one happened kind of right on the cusp of the great crash of '07/08, and I was just sort of like, okay, I'll never get published. But then my wife notes that I'm kind of a pain in the butt to live with when I don't have a writing project. So she's just like, just start something. And I'd been meeting all these veterans who were my clients coming home from war, and I started talking to them about their experiences, and that's where that first book came from. But I was really just writing about, writing for myself, writing a story that I wanted to read, which I think is a great recipe for how to write something that's compelling. The fact that I am now 9 books in is utterly astonishing to me. I never thought I'd be published, let alone actually making a living at it. So it's a strange world I live in.
Let's talk veterans and PTSD for a moment. You've crafted one of the most authentic portrayals of a veteran struggling with PTSD in modern thrillers. Without having served yourself, how did you approach that responsibility?
Oh, it's a huge responsibility. And I came by it very organically. I just started, I had met people who were going through this experience. And through a strange happenstance of our how we met, I was kind of a safe person to talk to. I wasn't part of they were my client and they were never going to see me again. So I wasn't part of their family group. I wasn't part of their military friend group. And so I was somebody who was safe to tell about some of these dark moments in their lives in combat. And um, again, I never thought this book would get published. I did my usual research. I talked to more people. I read a bunch of books, but I had a moment of panic about 2 or 3 weeks before that first book was going to get published, where I called my editor to say, look, I don't think we should do this because I'm not a veteran, and I was terrified that I was going to get it wrong. And I've never pretended to be a vet. There's an afterword that really talks about all of this in that book. Um, but she said, oh, you're very clear. This is fiction. This is you're allowed to do this. And then the response from readers who are veterans is astonishing, ranging from I did an event at a library where two women came up to me and they said, our husbands are both Vietnam veterans, and your book helped us understand how to talk to them about their war. To this long series of messages on social media from people who, I'm a cop and the work has really messed me up, and reading your book really helped me understand how to, that's what's happening with me. The one that really sticks with me is a young man who basically said, I've spent the summer trying to figure out how to kill myself, and somebody gave me your book, and now I know I'm not going crazy. I just have post-traumatic stress and I'm getting help. And he includes a picture of him and his wife and their three little kids. And I never would have thought that book would have that much reach and would actually mean something. My goal is to write something fast and fun and entertaining, but there's always something else that the books are about. There's something at the heart of the books that is interesting to me that I think is important to talk about. And so that's kind of how I started it. And now like I say, I'm 9 books in and I'm still writing about these issues because I think it's important.
And that last story alone got to make it so worthwhile for you.
Yeah, it is really the privilege of my life to get to continue to have those conversations with folks.
KT Thorson is a fierce investigative journalist who receives a very specific death threat. What drew you to putting a journalist at the center of this story?
Well, I think journalism is really important, and we are right now at this moment where we are seeing kind of a fracturing of the media landscape. But journalists are increasingly under threat all over the world. There's some international agreements about that you don't target members of the press, but like Russia in particular has been brutal about killing critics of the regime. And so I'm a fan of journalism. I'm a fan of journalists. I think it's really difficult work. And I think there is something sort of really chilling about, a threat to someone who is really just trying to follow the facts and to tell a story about what's really happening. So, and I also, I always need a connection to our hero, Peter Ash, and Peter's girlfriend is also a journalist. So this could be a friend of June's. I mean, there are some sort of prosaic reasons to approach the story from that angle. But it's sort of a pet issue for me.
You touched on this earlier. You explore how technology and even AI is reshaping opportunity, also feeling resentment too. What fascinates you most about that divide?
Well, so we've gone through the multiple sort of technological upheavals. You go back to the Industrial Revolution, right? So that was a gigantic shift, but it took 100 plus years. And then you go back, then you go to, sort of the offshoring, the internationalization of manufacturing, which started in the, late 80s and early 90s and took about 25 to 30 years to kind of utterly change the landscape in this country. And I think, that AI has the capacity to have as radical a change in a much shorter timeline. So it's going to be really interesting to watch. And I think people are increasingly nervous about this. And it's not just sort of the data center showing up in people's backyards with their giant demands for water and electricity. It's, people are thinking, well, who's going to profit from this, right? And are the profits going to, is anything going to trickle down to the people whose lives are, sort of displaced by this technology? And we're really at the very beginning of this. And even if sort of the craziest promises of AI never happen, that we don't generate, 1,000 super intelligences, but like we are already seeing the automation of really common white collar tasks.
Yeah.
And it's going to be, there, it's really going to be an upheaval, I think, even if things don't accelerate. So it's interesting to watch and interesting to think about.
And moving very, very quickly. Speaking of moving quickly, your pacing is relentless. Do you outline your thrillers, Nick, meticulously, or do you discover the danger as you go along?
I don't outline. I really sort of tell myself a story as I am writing the book. And the pacing piece for me is important. I really, I like to read books where I'm turning the pages to figure out what happens next. And I think readers are the same way. And there's there's sort of a constant editing process as I write to ask myself, so is this too fast? Is this too slow? Do I need a moment of rest after something exciting? Do I need a moment of, do I need to inject a moment of conflict here? So I'm always thinking about pace and tension as I go.
Nick, you're a former carpenter and building inspector. You know how structures hold together. Does that background influence how you build a novel?
A little bit. I mean, I don't think consciously about structure, but I am interested in it, and I can, I sort of see things after the fact and adjust accordingly. I think mostly the way that shows up in these books is Peter himself, and being in the military is really a blue collar job. You're working with your body, just like being a cop or being a firefighter. And Peter grew up working on houses with his dad, and so he's a blue collar guy too, and that sort of working class sort of ethic really fills in the gaps. That's the world that Peter is living in. So to me, that's sort of the inheritance of my own time in that world.
Nick, from The Drifter winning major awards to now 9 books in, what surprised you most about this journey as a writer?
Just the fact that I get to do it at all. It's such a privilege to be able to have these conversations with readers. I fully imagine that I would be, swinging a hammer and climbing through attics and up on roofs, for the rest of my working life. And the fact that I now get to travel the country and I can count as friends some of the, biggest novelists of our time is, it's a great gift and a great privilege. Um, the other thing though is and this is sort of for aspiring writers, I assumed that after a while the work would get easier, that I would have developed a form of mastery and I would just, it would be a less painful process. And I guess what I've learned is that it isn't easy, and it will never be easy, and that's okay with me, because to do anything well requires effort, and every book is a one-off in a way. These are ongoing characters, an ongoing series, but somebody once said that writing a book is like inventing a new mathematical formula. And every book is a new formula that you have to sort of come up on your own, right? And so to me, that is the ongoing surprise, is at how how bad at this I feel sometimes. I keep waiting for that feeling of mastery, and it has not yet appeared.
All right, without spoilers, what can you tease about what's next for Peter Ash?
The next book in this series is already done, and it takes place actually not far from where you are, Steve, on the Appalachian Trail in northern Tennessee and southern Virginia. Peter comes up upon an older hiker who is being mugged on the trail, and Peter intervenes. And of course, things turn in an entirely unexpected direction, as I like to do with my stories.
And Nick, when readers close the final page of The Dark Time, what do you hope lingers with them?
Well, this is a story that it's about hard stuff, and I want people to leave with that sense of hope that I try to cultivate, that we are all in this together, and that we get to decide the kind of world that we want to live in. But you don't get to sit back; you have to participate. You know that is the nature of life itself, and I think if more of us realize that, we might live in a better world where we can, implement the things that we really all agree on.
Nick Petrie's latest novel is The Dark Time, the ninth electrifying installment in the Peter Ash series. If you're looking for a thriller that captures the urgency of the world we're living in right now, this one belongs at the top of your list, my friend. And you can find The Dark Time wherever books are sold. Nick Petrie, thank you for joining me here on the Speaking of Writers podcast.
Oh, thanks so much, Steve. It's always a pleasure. You always ask such great questions.
Thank you. It's always great to have you. And don't forget to subscribe to the Speaking of Writers podcast on Spotify, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for watching and for listening. I will talk to you again next time.